Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third FBL Talks webinar from the Football Blacklist, supported by the Premier League. The European Championships may well be in full swing and at the knockout stages, and the question is, will it be coming home? Time will tell. But the hard work and delivery of such impactful events as today continue, and the Football Blacklist continues to highlight and celebrate those making a difference. The focus of today's discussion will be around highlighting positive Black role models working in administration this time, the real decision makers at the centre of football clubs and community initiatives alike. We are blessed to have some fabulous panel members today, including two women making moves in senior boardroom positions. FBL Talks serves as a brilliant opportunity to hear from people working across various roles within our game, offering the platform and recognition which these individuals richly deserve. But before we get to our two panel members, I've got to introduce Oren Bristol from the Premier League's Football Data Co. Oren is a business executive there. And at this time of the year, when people are looking forward to their holidays and maybe relaxing a little bit, Oren and the team are working tirelessly at Football Data Co. Oren, good evening to you. How are you?
Good evening, Ronnie. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As Ronnie said, my name is Oren Bristol. I'm a business executive at Football Data Co.
Tell us a little bit about what, first of all, Football Data Co. is, please, Oren.
Yeah, sure. Football Data Co. represents the data rights of professional football leagues in England and Scotland. The main aspects of the business are to protect, commercialise and market the rights to official match data. And in conjunction with that, we also managed the central accreditation scheme for media to attend EFL and Premier League matches.
And in terms of where you're at right now, obviously we're preparing for a new season domestically, aren't we? Middle of early August, middle of August. Tell us what your daily role might be there at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm part of the team that mainly day-to-day manages the accreditation process for broadcasters and medias to access EFL or Premier League matches. So be like yourself, Rodney, or somebody else from a publication who may contact us asking to upload and provide access to journalists, photographers, or broadcast representatives.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, people like me and others can't get into football matches to serve the public without you looking after us. And I know COVID presented one or two challenges, didn't it? Last season. How did you cope with that, Oren?
In terms of access to it, I think it was obviously the leagues came up with their plans and we just adhered to them. I think everybody was quite knowledgeable and kind of understanding that there would be some restrictions, but it seems to be working all right. Well.
Obviously, it's an FBL Talks. You've attended the Football Blacklist in the past.
Yes.
We briefly sort of like said hello to each other as I'm running around. Describe the event for us. Was it?
Yeah, I've been
as an attendant
for 3 years. I think it's always been an enjoyable occasion. I see loads of people attending, and it's great to see over the years as well, like the PL and obviously the Football Blacklist Awards kind of working in conjunction with each other and producing like such a great event. And I think hopefully, obviously probably not this year, but hopefully maybe next year we can kind of see and attend those kind of events going forward.
And obviously when we talk about football, we're generally always talking about players and coaches and managers. You're a great example that if people want to get involved in the game, they can do so in a slightly different way, can't they?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely different administrative roles that are out there that hopefully people can be aware of. And I know the Premier League also doing some great work behind the scenes, kind of trying to get that information out there.
Lovely. Oren, thank you so much for your time. It's nice for me and you to have a conversation. I'm not talking about my accreditation for the voice. And I must say you do such great diligent work along with the team. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was Oren Bristol from the Premier League's Football Data Co. Essentially, journos, media, press, whichever term you want to use, we cannot get into our much loved football matches without the solid contribution of Oren and the team. Right now, to introduce our special guests, I'd like to, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we have two incredible role models with us this evening at boardroom level, big decision makers. We know the more visible our role models are, the more likely they are to encourage others from the community to push forward within administration field and build trust amongst the said community. First up, I'd like to introduce Sarah Ebanja, Chief Executive Officer at the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation. Hi, Sarah, how you doing? Sarah, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you. Yes, I can. How are you doing today,
I'm
Sarah?
very well, thank you, Rodney. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Now, I can see the backdrop.
Yeah.
Now, is there something we need to know? I know Tottenham are without a coach at the moment. Has something happened that we need to know about?
I don't know, but what do you want to say?
Okay.
When you're part of a community linked to the club, you actually, isn't it fantastic that I can sit here?
Absolutely right.
Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely right. Next up is Fleur Robinson, Chief Executive Officer at Wrexham AFC. Hi, Fleur. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? I'm well, thank you. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, good to see you both. Right, let's start with Sarah, Chief Executive Officer at the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation. Tell us a little bit about that role, please, Sarah.
So I joined the foundation in 2018, and it was at a time actually when the stadium was just about to be completed. So it was actually a fantastic time in the story of the foundation, which became a charity 11 years ago. And obviously with this fantastic multi-purpose stadium, so it's not just a football stadium, £1 billion worth of investment gone into Tottenham. It's been our home. Tottenham has been our home for over 100 years. So making this sort of investment in the area and recognizing that we're not just what the elite players do on the pitch, we're more than that. I like to view my role as being the manager for what we do in the community. So my team are like the elite players, but my team do their work out in the community. And our overall raison d'etre is really to use sport as a means to really try and regenerate, refresh, contribute to people just being successful in their lives through the power of sport. And what better than being part of a global brand which works incredibly closely with our communities to try and bring that inspiration, show that we can all be ambitious, we can all pursue success, whatever is going on in the rest of our lives. And this fantastic stadium, which is our home, is a means to really help push that. So that's what we focus on. We've got a team of about 60 staff, and they're out delivering, they're out making all the difference. I can think about what we need to do along with the rest of the team, but actually they're the ones that do it on the pitch for us.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for setting the scene there. Just going to move over to Fleur now. I know now you're at Wrexham, recently appointed. Congratulations on that. But previously, you and your father were at Burton Albion as chairman and commercial director, respectively. Just tell us a little bit about that role, please, Fleur.
Yeah, so obviously I've been involved for over 25 years in the game, and starting out at Burton, and along the way done many roles that culminated in the commercial director role, and pretty much in that role, sort of day-to-day operational responsibility, and as anybody in football, to deal with many different challenges along the way. So yeah, I've had a great experience in doing that and getting to that position with that responsibility.
Does the move to Wrexham, having served your time at Burton Albion, does that hold you in good stead?
Yes, most definitely. I think anybody that works in football and if you can get across, those departments within the business and understand, every inch of it certainly will, bode me well here with my new role. So yeah, most definitely.
Question to both of you now. What's a typical day for a CEO at your respective setups? Sarah? What's a typical day? Is there such a typical day? And if there isn't, just explain maybe what you're doing on a daily basis.
I wouldn't say there's a typical day, and it's really hard to sort of describe a typical day after we're just coming out of the COVID period. There's so much uncertainties about it. But I'll give you a flavour of today, actually, which in some respects it does capture a typical day. So I live about 45 minutes from the office, get to the office this morning. I had a couple of meetings organised this morning, needed to finish off some information, working with the auditors linked to our accounts. Then had to look at actually what are the range of activities that we're going to offer in the summer, because we're publicising in the local authorities brochure about all the things that we're doing. I wandered around the curtilage at the edges of the stadium because we're activating that space. We're bringing in some modular pitches into the air, and we're going to be able to start doing some of activities on appropriate surfaces in the area. And I say appropriate because at the moment we do deliver some of our activities on the stadium concourse, which is absolutely fantastic, doing that, but less so when it's raining, I should say, and then we go inside. And then I had a meeting with the local authority, one of their officers who leads a team of social workers in schools in the borough. And we work very, very closely with the local authorities, because one of the key things that we do, which is really important to us, is trying to support young people that aren't doing as well as they should be doing in schools. So we have arrangements in most of our secondary schools in the borough. So I was meeting up, as I say, with an officer who works with the social workers within each of those schools to actually see how can we link up. And then after that, I had a meeting with a sports coach from a local college, offers multi-sports, and which is that what we want to offer. Obviously, the beautiful game is at our heart, but what we're trying to do as well is ensure that whatever activity will encourage people to really, I suppose, get up and do something every day so that they keep fit, which is really important in the areas that we live in, because COVID has hit us quite badly. And so again, working with the local college, really looking at what do some of our communities want and reaching out much more with our communities, and then having a test for today's session. So that's what today is like. Tomorrow will be different.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Fleur, you can no doubt relate to some of the things Sarah just talked about in terms of meetings and getting organised, etc., etc. Just share with us maybe what it's been like for you. I know you're sort of changing jobs, but essentially it might be the same.
Yeah, and I think, when things are settled, my day will probably pan out, very similar to Sarah's. One thing I always say, that working in football every day is absolutely different, and you can never guarantee, and you usually set out with a good plan and probably get a quarter of the way through it. But again, here being Wrexham, obviously it's very early days here. So for me, it's very much setting those foundations. We've got a very small, loyal team here. It's, slowly building on that, and not sort of new broom sweeping clean, but just, identifying the day-to-day essentials really in any business, to make sure that we can build on that, and develop and support, the huge interest that obviously Wrexham's attracting at the moment. I think today has been an exceptional day in terms of, has been able to announce a global brand in our key sponsor, and also our kitch launch as well. So, but as I say, absolutely every day is different, and I think that's why certainly I enjoy working in this position.
And obviously, you've made the move from Burton to Wrexham, Fleur. Must be similarities, as you said. But what are amongst the challenges that you face as a CEO at a football club, for example?
I think, it's that day-to-day. It's like any CEO, in any business, being there to support and guide, and deal with issues, and obviously create and shout about all the positives. So I think, every club's different as well, so you can't sort of go into one club with the same attitude and approach as you would as of a previous club. I'm lucky here that the values of the local community, are very aligned with Burton and Wrexham and our new owners. Our chairman, got very similar values and vision in terms of what we want to do here. So for me, it's a good transition period. So
absolutely. Let me just pop back to Sarah for a moment. Sarah, you were chair, I believe, at the Burnley Arts Centre and the Stephen Lawrence Trust. Share a little bit about that, and has that proved to be a pathway to where you are now in terms of what you're doing?
Well, there's many aspects I can share about that. But in terms of being a pathway to what I'm doing, I think the key thing is it has, because the different people within you with whom you interact, the different organisations with whom you interact, you will always learn from, and you will always develop from. And so, you know, and I'm very much somebody that thinks about actually pushing outside one's comfort zone, learning from others. And so I got involved with the Bernie Grant Arts Centre actually before I got involved with the Stephen Lawrence Trust. And this was at a time when Ken Livingstone, who was the Mayor of London, and this follows from actually Tony Blair being Prime Minister, recognised the importance that in regeneration in any area, it's important that you engage with the communities and that they're involved, and there's a co-production or a co-development rather than the communities feeling that it's being done to them. And so therefore it makes it really important that if we are of those communities, and we are all of those communities because we all live in areas, we all have passions about things. And if we, you know, there's one thing about moaning about things or feeling a little bit disgruntled about things. There's another thing about, okay, stepping up and saying, okay, how can I get involved a little bit more to try and bring about the change and try and contribute to addressing some of those things that maybe I feel less comfortable with, or addressing some of those things which I feel are stifling our community, whatever the community is. And it doesn't matter, it could be a neighbourhood community, it could be a community because we share the same interest, or it could be because we're a BAME community, whatever those issues are. So really getting involved with your communities and volunteering becomes incredibly important. And I have to say, I first started getting involved in, I suppose, boards, and when, from a very selfish perspective, when I first decided to pursue a career in accountancy. And somebody said to me, it'd be really good if you got on your CV what you're doing in your local community. And at the time I was a single parent. They were looking for governors at the school, and I'm thinking, hey, let me become a school governor. And that's how I started off in sort of becoming a school governor. And then I recognized that actually being on these boards or being on governing bodies, actually the key thing you need to do is focus on what the purpose of your organization is, your entity, that vision, and contribute towards it. Yeah. And so with both the Stephen Lawrence and the Bernie Grant, that was really important. I think that there were challenges there, and their challenges really, I suppose it's against the system overall, because it was a new approach that Ken Livingstone had and Tony Blair had about this investment in the communities. And what Ken Livingstone specifically said, he created what was termed 4 black projects in London. And this is where the investment would be made in black-led projects across the capital. 4 of them, 2 of them, which of course were the Stephen Lawrence Trust and the Bernie Grant Arts Centre. And there were challenges with that, institutionalised challenges with that. But it's fantastic that they're there today. They're fully functioning, fully operational, notwithstanding COVID's been a bit of a nightmare for many, many businesses, including ourselves. But I would highly recommend that, if you really care about things and you really want to make a difference, that rather than just talk about it, get involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fleur, Sarah sort of outlined there how she got involved with boards, etc., etc. What was your pathway to the boardroom as such?
5 years ago, obviously my father being chairman, so I got involved, on the day-to-day different aspects of the role, and then gradually grew that. And it definitely wasn't the fact that I was the chairman's daughter. I certainly had to prove my point and my worth along that journey. So obviously done lots of different roles amongst the club, to the point where I was asked to be a director of the club and take over the commercial responsibilities.
Just a question for both of you. What traits are required to serve in the boardroom successfully? Can you share that for us? It's out to both of you. What traits and personalities? Because we have people obviously tuned in right now that will aspire to do the same thing. What traits would you say are required?
I'll give you one trait, and then Fleur can give you one, and then we'll go. You can do it like that if you want.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
And I'll say that listening is really, really important. And I just add to that, it's listening within the content of being clear. You're on that board, and what is the overall purpose of that board? And I think so that would be one of the traits that I think is really important, to be able to listen and listen without bias.
Fleur, from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and and I think it's that supportive role as well, in terms of having that vision and setting that strategy, but also that supportive role within the organisation as well.
And what were the early days in the boardroom like for you, Fleur? Were they nervy? Were you comfortable straight away, or what was that like? Because obviously it would have been totally foreign to you at that time, but what was that like for you initially? Yeah,
well, again, I've been lucky at Burton because I've had very supportive colleagues on the board and staff, and I think I've been very fortunate as well throughout life. I know when we first got promoted into the football conference, I went to commercial managers meeting. I was the only female there, and I was more than half younger than everybody else around the table. But so yeah, it was very daunting, but fortunate for me, it was a welcoming environment and a supportive one as well. And a lot of those people I'm still in touch with now in terms of any support and advice I need going forward.
Fantastic. Sarah, for you, early days in the boardroom, nervous or totally confident from the off, or just adjusted to what you needed to do?
I'm nervous with everything that I do. The first time doing anything, you're nervous. You just got to try and get over that nerve thing. And I think also, I just want to add one other thing, which I think has really been really important to me in terms of going into board. So even though I was absolutely awful at maths at school, absolutely useless, I've always been interested in what motivates people to behave as they do. And I've always been interested in what would motivate people to call me names simply because of my skin color. So it's always been, and I've always found that fascinating. And I remember saying to somebody once, how can I find out what's the profession I should go into if I want to actually understand businesses and why businesses say one thing, for example, we are an equal opportunities employer, or we are X and Y, yet it doesn't feel like that when you're with the organization. And they told me to become an accountant. And I'm like, I'm useless at maths. I said, it doesn't matter. Become an accountant, because if you follow the money, this is a bit like criminals, actually. If you watch TV detective shows, they just say, follow the money. And so one of the things for me about when I studied to become an accountant, and therefore you have to understand business processes, you have to understand motivation, it's ultimately all about the finances. How are you applying your resources to do that? And so whenever I go onto any board, whenever I'm involved in any organization, the first thing that I do is look at their latest published report and accounts, because in there, there'll be a statement from the chairman or the chief executive officer which tells you what they're looking forward to do. And then the actual accounts themselves tell you what they've been doing in the past. And that gives you a fantastic flavor of the organization. And the other thing that I do is always Google search the latest news for that organization. And so when I go into that organization, even in the first time that I go in there, I think I have a sense of what some of those current issues are, and I have a sense of it from the financial side. So as an accountant, and I feel very comfortable with that, and I think that with that profession, obviously I can't speak for other professions, it does give me a level of confidence before I go into things, because I can, in some respects, challenge some things factually, if, by looking at accounts. So, but always nervous, but you have to get over it. Most people can be nervous about things, but I'm there for a purpose.
Yeah, some great information that you're both imparting. Thank you very much. I know you might have alluded to it slightly, Sarah, but how do people and those watching this webinar who maybe don't feel it's for them, how do they start to get involved with the board? What are the things that they can do right from the off, even just at a junior sort of level?
I've always been fascinated with boards, and probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I started doing some work, which because I was very fascinated. For 9 years, I've been chair of a housing and care organisation, 100 million turnover business in London. And they're very, very passionate, in North London actually, very passionate about equalities. And we had a very diverse board. And I've always been interested, and this was at a time when there was a report came out from the NHS, it must have been about 6 years ago, called the Snowy White Peaks of the NHS. It was about the governance in the NHS saying that they had to become more diverse. And if you think of public services, you really do need to reflect your communities, otherwise you can't understand what the services that are required or needed, or how best to deliver those services. And, you know, even the terminology that these are communities that are hard to reach. No, that's wrong. The services are hard for the communities to reach. So within that context overall, it is vitally important, I think, and for me, from my perspective, that I tend to bang on a little bit about involving the community, talking to the community, and not making assumptions based on your own background, your own stories, your own family settings. Because every one of us, so, you know, there's what, 6 or 7 of us involved in this evening's webinar. We've all got different stories, and each of those stories are just as valuable as anybody else's. And the important thing is how can they be expressed and how can they be heard to be able to improve what you offer. You're a journalist, Rodney. You know you've got to attract readers. And so everything to me is all about understanding, or at least having that knowledge to then help inform decision making. Yeah.
Get the information, make no assumptions.
Yeah.
Fleur, could you add to that at all? In terms of someone right at the really outset of their board vision, what sort of advice do you think you could give them?
Yeah, I think, you know, it goes back to what Sarah said, and I think in terms of, you know, within football, I think, you know, you've got to get in it at any level that you can. And I always say, you know, to people that are looking to take that career within football, that, you know, it might be that you have to look at a position that you don't quite want to do long term, but once you're in, that opens up lots of opportunities, and it's that initial getting in and then progressing there. In terms of board level, you know, we certainly hope that things will change going forward in terms of that accessibility to that, but in terms of actually getting into the game, I just think you've got to be creative and look at the option, you know, the different ways that you can get into that environment first.
And what would you say, I mean, it might just, and this is for both of you, what would you say to women in particular? Fleur alluded to the fact that one of her early board meetings, you know, you was almost on your own to some degree, but women in particular, what would you say to those that feel that it's not for them? The sport, never mind the boardroom.
You know what, we can always say things are not for us, but does that mean we should give up? Because if we're saying things are not for us because maybe we're not being selected or for whatever reason, actually, in some respects, I don't know if this is the right terminology, we're admitting a little bit of a defeat. So even when, in fact, I should have covered it in that last question that you asked, Rodney, because when I was looking at actually what do we need to do so that there are more minorities on boards, I felt actually that the approach that had been taken all the way along is always to push organisations to change, to push organisations to open themselves up. We can all create all these systems that say we're going to do X and Y, but ultimately if things aren't changing or changing quickly. So my thought was, well, actually, what we need to be able to do, whether you're women or minority, is that be able to put in fantastic applications that actually result in being shortlisted and having a face-to-face interview. And when you have that face-to-face interview, to be able to just really impress them so much, even if you might be a wild card, that they want, I need that person on this board because they're bringing something different. And for women in particular, what I find that we tend to do as women, and this has been throughout my career, I've found this, and I used to do, for example, financial management, financial accounting for women, particular courses. I do mixed courses and ones for women, is that, and this is a sweeping generalization. If a job gets advertised, I generalize it as what a woman will do is look at the job and think, oh, that looks interesting, then look at the job description and the person spec and think, oh, I can't do that, I've not done that, no, I'm not going to apply. Where a man might look at it and think, hey, I like the sound of that job and put in an application. My general view of life is you don't ask, you don't get. So if you're looking at that, and in lots of instances, they might have a person spec and a job description saying you've got to do X and Y. Ultimately, organisations will appoint those people who they've decided to select and they've seen and think, yeah, that's the one that I want. So I'd always encourage people, put in an application, because when you're applying for things, it's about capability. And I think there's many ways that we can demonstrate our skills as women, particularly linked around multitasking. And it may be that, and I think that we do that, or my experience is that we do that multitasking far more often than men might do that multitasking. So I think my main view is just think about the role, think about the overall purpose of the role, but do not be put off because you can't tick every box that is on that job description or person spec. First, must be getting shortlisted.
Yeah, great advice there. Fleur, Sarah's message is keep pushing, be adventurous. I suppose you would concur with that.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, she's dead right, I think, and you know, we've seen that with myself as well. That you read through job descriptions, and you know, you kind of put yourself off, and it's that confidence, and that's something I've been really passionate about, particularly when I was at Burton, and I hope to bring to Wrexham in terms of, you know, creating that educational piece around, you know, anything's possible. And as Sarah says, if you don't have a go or don't apply, you know, you're not in the hat. So yeah, I'm you know, all for that in terms of making sure that we create that confidence building, and make sure that people, you know, you've got to be out of your comfort zone. As Sarah said earlier, that, you know, we'll get nerves and we're all out of a comfort zone, but that's, you know, that should be turned into a positive.
Staying with you, Fleur, I mean, I know that you've done some great work in regards to the development of the women's game. And you've also been central to an initiative called Inspiring Your Future. Can you just share a little bit about both sections? First of all, you know, the development of the women's game.
Yeah, I think the women's game really started when I joined FA Council. I think being so heavily involved in Burton through the years, I've never really focused on the women's game, and not for any real reason particularly, but it was one thing that I really wanted to do and gain a greater knowledge and understanding and experience of that, which, you know, has been great over the last 4 years, and I've been able to do that. And then towards my time leaving Burton, we were able to bring the women's team under the structure of the club, so hopefully they've got the right foundations going forward, and that's, you know, something again here at Wrexham that I was delighted to hear that you know, with the new chairman, that, you know, the equal measure in terms of support around community and women's football. So that's something that I'm looking forward to helping to develop, move forward. And then in terms of Inspiring Your Future, I've alluded to earlier that I just felt there's this real need around, you know, young people, particularly women to start with, in terms of and to make sure that as people, you know, preparing for their career moves, have got the right support around them, and a lot of that was around that confidence building and being aware of your environment, and not being afraid to push yourselves out of that comfort zone. And that was really successful, and we've had a couple of sessions with girls and then mixed with boys as well, because, you know, it shouldn't be split between the two. Or interestingly, when we had the sessions, the girls and boys both felt that they benefited from, you know, single events, which was interesting. And then we moved that onto a business model as well, so that local businesses were involved in a session around health and well-being. And I think as leaders, you know, we all look after everybody around us in our organisation, but we kind of neglect ourselves and our own needs. So it was really important to highlight that to local leaders.
Staying with the women's game, Fleur, how pleased are you to see that the game is really moving in the right direction? Sky Sports will be covering it even more so than before. There's investment now. I think I got an email earlier on to say that the FA Cup finals in 2022, the men's and the women's, will be on consecutive days. The game at last is truly getting some recognition, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I think, you know, you look over the last couple of years in terms of the commercial engagement as well, and the sponsors that the women's game's attracting. You know, I think it's absolutely fantastic, you know, and really from a lot of hard work from some very special individuals to make sure that they keep chipping away, you know, and creating that change and that growth. So, you know, it's absolutely incredible, and really excited to see how that develops, you know, further. And like you say, you know, get the FA Cup on consecutive days is, you know, it's just another good example of how things are moving forward.
It's a great move. Sarah, in regard to the foundation, fabulous stadium in North London there. Just what has it done for the community in the area?
I'd say the first thing it would have done for the community in the area is shows that it's a valued area. You know, when you know, I associate this with some of the issues. For example, if you Googled Spurs, or sorry, if you Googled Tottenham, what would come up first of all is Spurs. Fantastic. Next thing that comes up is about riots and trouble. And, you know, this is not Tottenham. Tottenham's a fantastic place. You know, it's a place that, you know, like many places in London, in urban areas and highly diverse areas, it's a place where there's disadvantage. It's a place where there's, you know, low levels of income and things like that. But it's also a rich place. It's a fantastic place. And I think one of the things about investing money in an area like this, you know, because the club could have gone somewhere else, is actually it's recognizing this is a place worth being in. It's a place of value. So, and obviously, well, we know what's happened. The stadium opened. I don't even think we've had a full year yet in our stadium because of COVID. And COVID's been absolutely devastating within this area. But what this is, and this is why it's so important, foundation working really closely together. No, that magic can't be done on the pitch anymore. It can only be done with small numbers coming in. But actually, that then means that we can do more within the communities as well, through player appearances and things like that. It's meant a lot. Once it's up again, once these COVID rules have gone, what will be fantastic is what we're able to do is we're able to support people getting employment within the stadium. We have 3,500 people working on match days. We try and ensure that at least 30% of those are from the immediate local areas and vicinity. And so it's those types of things. It's made a huge difference. It's brought us fantastic opportunities through the club, which we can pass on to our communities. And there's just one thing I also want to add, Rodney, because you didn't ask me about women's football, you see.
I was coming to that.
I'm going to leave you to ask me about that then.
No, go for it. Go for it. You're on a roll.
You know, you asked us earlier on, when you introduced us, you spoke about administration. You asked us about our roles and some of the things in our roles. So one of the things for me, in any organisation I work in, I think, I better get to know what we actually deliver to our customers. What's our product? I've got to love our product. So I've recently, now that COVID's over, I've started doing walking, or women's walking football, I should say. Get a little bit fitter because I'm very unfit. And I thought it was a nice, gentle thing, but I realise it's highly competitive. And I realise I'm pretty competitive as well. But we're using football in all its guises, and walking football in particular, to get mothers out to do more and more football themselves and realise how fantastic it is, because then they'll encourage their girls to participate more in football and other team sports as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's been a challenging 15, 16 months. It was challenging before, obviously a lot more so now. The importance of black representation in the boardroom, more important than ever, isn't it, surely, Sarah?
16 months challenging after the George Floyd murder,
and
then all the fallout. It is really important. And I think one positive that has come from it, I mean, there may be more positives from it, but I just think one positive, it's opened up people's eyes to recognise that there is institutionalised discrimination, or there is systemic behaviours that hold back the growth of talent, and particularly for people of colour. And therefore, I think there's a recognition of that, and a recognition that there needs to be changes which should facilitate greater ability to join the boardrooms. And I say should facilitate, it's still highly competitive. You know, we're in a hierarchy. You know, there's only going to be so many in a boardroom. And if I look more at the public sector side and the voluntary sector side of boardrooms rather than the pure private sector side of boardrooms, what's really important is it's like applying for a job. There will be many people that apply. So you've got to be able to demonstrate what do you bring that's extra. I think the organisations are more open now to having people of colour on the board, and I say that on the basis that I'm not saying they were closed to it, but for some reason we weren't getting around that board table, and we were just as capable of anybody else of getting around that board table. That's why it's so important to develop ourselves, so that we will be the choice that is selected to go forward. And it is vitally important now to do that. But if people cannot get on boards, because they're not going to be boards for all of us, then we have to find other ways of how can we continue to learn, develop and grow, and to be able to add value. So when we do apply, and in a situation, if we get rejected, if we've been rejected before where we get appointed, it's actually learning more about those organisations and what they're facing as they move forward. So yes, very, very important.
Yeah. Fleur, it's to be hoped that the last 16 months can be the catalyst of some change in the boardrooms and in life generally, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we've all been able to have that time to reflect on many things. And, I think that, the change is happening in certain areas, but organisations will have to look, at their models, their structures and the local community and make sure that that's representative. And I think, any successful business has to have that diverse workforce and that leadership model. So hopefully, that time will hopefully bode well in terms of that time to reflect and make that change and start moving things forward.
And Fleur, do you get the sense, because you're at the top end of the game, as they say, you're in that boardroom, do you sense that the game is ready for change now? Do you feel that? Do you hope that?
Yeah, it is ready for change, and I hope there's still an awful lot of work, as we all know, to do that. And I think at the different levels as well of the game, in terms of how productive and they are in terms of moving that and creating that change. So we have seen changes, but as we all know, there's an awful lot more to do.
Sarah, do you feel that sea change coming? Do you feel positive about the future in regards to some of the areas that we're discussing right now?
Yeah, I do. I feel very positive, and if I I look at it in comparison to, I can only obviously talk about it from the perspective of, I've been in the sector from an administrative perspective since 2018. I see some real change going on, focus change, and I see things happening. I'm here at Spurs, and I see some great things that we're doing at Spurs and that we're doing in the area. And I think different clubs are doing different things to try and approach it. We're in a community where, the population that we serve is probably nigh on 1 million. And of that population, we're talking 400,000 people at BAME, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. That's fantastic. That's a rich diversity right on our doorstep, and we've got to take advantage of that and use that. And I say take advantage and use it because we as the foundation, as the club, we believe we can really make a difference to the sector by actually focusing some of our attention to really address where there's underrepresentation, not just within our own organisations and entities, but within the sector as well, and be creative with that. Because if we just wait for natural turnover of full-time permanent positions, for example, to bring around that change, and when we're in very big organisations, that will still take a long time to shift the dial. So we're looking at a whole variety of ways that we can contribute, work alongside others, work alongside other businesses in our areas, within our sectors, to really try and push that change. So yes, I do see change happening.
Fantastic. We have some questions sent in by the audience. They're for both of you. So let's start with a question from Jermaine George. The question is, how important is recruitment in your role, and how do you identify external partners? Fleur, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, so recruitment's key, obviously within any organisation, and I think it's having that open approach and trying to align partners in terms of what it is that you're engaging with. So whether that's on a local level, national or global, and from a club point of view in terms of commercial partners, what they bring. And I think it's really important that values are aligned as well, to forge those long-term partnerships. And I'm sure Sarah will agree in terms of community aspect as well. Obviously that's vital in terms of having those values and the vision aligned as well. Yeah.
Sarah, same question to you. How important is recruitment in your role, and how do you identify external partners?
Okay, so recruitment, as I said, our organisation's about 60. I've probably got, in a normal year, I ignore the COVID year, I've probably got a turnover of about 10%. So that's about 10 to 15%. So that's 6 or 9 people leaving each year. So recruitment is really important, but we've got to do more than just recruitment if you're trying to bring around change within the sector. But vitally important in the fact that we're just investing along with the club in a range of traineeship and apprenticeship roles where recruitment will be from our communities within our areas of young people, where we're developing and training them. And a key part of those roles is co-production and co-involvement with those communities so that we ourselves as organisations can learn and develop and grow. And in terms of external partners, and external partners are vitally important. We're not an island, we do what we do is we do it very well, but we can do it even better if we do it in partnership with like-minded organizations that can do the things that we can't do, but add to the things that we can do. And the values point that Fleur mentioned is of the utmost importance. And the other thing that's of the utmost importance from my perspective from the foundation, it's really important, and I imagine this is the same for every organization, they'll say this, that brand and reputation are of the utmost importance. And so how I interpret that with the foundation is that we will collaborate with many people, but however, that collaboration is very much where we Spurs Foundation, our identity is very clear, we are delivering it, but in collaboration with others. And I say that because I have the most influence over the people I employ. Yeah. Have less influence with others. So I know with the people I employ that we can have our reputation, brand quality and standards. We should all know it. It should be in our DNA. And that's what's so important when we're out connecting with our communities. So external partners vitally important, but it's about knowing our role in that. And at a leadership level, really important is having that influence.
Great question there, and with some good answers as well. Justin Goodchild, the question is, what has been the hardest challenge you've faced and how did you overcome it? Sarah, what's been the hardest challenge and how did you overcome it? And a smile comes to your face.
I'm thinking, oh God, I'm assuming she's not meaning in my life. I'm assuming.
Well,
the hardest.
I would say professionally, yes, professionally. Yes.
I think professionally. Do you know what? I think I'd have to say the hardest challenge in anything, I think, is when you become a people manager. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the more senior you get in organisations where that seniority is often linked about managing people. And I'm saying this in the context of when you're chief exec, you're managing everyone within your organisation, whether it's an organisation within the foundation that's 60 or 70 people. In previous roles, I've been responsible for 800 staff, but you're viewed as the leader, you're viewed as the one, if things go wrong, it's you, if things are happy, it's you. And there's now accounting for, you go into your office, you plan to do something one day, I mean, we touched on this earlier, Fleur and I touched on this earlier, when, we all can take into the office things that are happening in our personal lives and that affect us. So I think managing people is actually, it's a real skill. It's something that you never become expert at it because you're learning every day with it. And that is more of a challenge for me than if somebody gives me a whole bag full of invoices and said, produce a set of accounts. I could do that. But it's managing people, managing our own, mental health, our own behaviors, our own responses to things. I think from a career perspective, that's been one of the biggest challenges, but it's also been one of the most interesting and rewarding things for me.
Okay. And Fleur, what about you? Hardest challenge that you've had to overcome and how did you do so?
Yeah, I always have a little joke about this. I think working in the family business was most definitely my hardest challenge for over 25 years. But but I think, there's exactly as having a team around you is always a challenge with different for different reasons, and I think it's again that expectation of yourself and that fine balance of time for yourself and as Sarah's already said, mental health, your own health, and clarity along the way, because I think as you grow as a leader and your team grows around you, you've got to have that focus on yourself and your team with you as well.
Okay, good. Last one from the audience is from Aladdin Ajayi. And the question is, the recently published report commissioned by 5 sports councils on lived experiences of racism in sport highlights some stark realities faced by Black and ethnically diverse people. How do you think trust can be built with sports institutions with Black and ethnically diverse communities? Sarah, how can that trust be built between the diverse communities and sports institutions?
So, as I mentioned earlier, listening is really important. But you know what? I think, and this is just, I suppose, a personal view from here is that it's really important that you can see people like you in an organisation, or even if you cannot see people like you in an organisation, you need to be able to trust people and you need to be able to feel that they are trusting you. And I think too often there is you can think, oh yeah, I'll do X and Y, and I can do X and Y or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean it connects with you as an individual. And so speaking as a BAME individual, and I think about, when I've gone for roles or jobs, or, there are organisations I had no intention of applying for, because it doesn't, what they say, I do not feel that it's an organisation that really values diversity or really respects or appreciates the community that it serves. And it may be that it just has a stereotype of a particular community, or may have a stereotype because of our skin colour or because of our gender. And, if you are a person of colour in the UK or in a white majority organisation, I say that as a person born in England, and half my family are white and half my family black, that you do need to feel trusted, because when we grow up as kids, we're growing up in a society where we're experiencing discrimination against us because of our colour. Whether we like to say that or not, or people will acknowledge it or not, that is the fact. And so for any organisation, and I think as individuals, we need to trust others. And so organisations, sports organisations, please really improve your diversity, because it's only through increasing that diversity. And if you want to bring about change, you need to have people like the people that actually you recognise that you've got to achieve change for, delivering your services. And making those decisions, being at the top table like we've been speaking about. So,
Fleur, from your viewpoint, how does that trust get built and made steady between diverse communities and sports institutions?
For a second, so I think you've got to see it to be it, and I think there's got to be from those leadership models have got to be a zero tolerance and ensure that diversity, with it the education, and then hopefully the trust comes with it as well.
Absolutely. Let me just ask a quick question. Had you two met each other before?
Should we tell the truth? No. No. Do you know what? I think you put something today that said Sarah Ebanja, Fleur Robinson at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I remember my team said to me, "Can you tell Fleur? I love her name." And I'm like, yeah, and then I'll tell her. He's probably watching now. Have you not got anything else? So no, we tried to connect. We weren't able to connect with each other. But
how inspirational!
I need to go to North Wales and Wrexham.
You're welcome anytime. I'd be really interested to see, obviously, what you're doing around your community as well. So yeah.
You ever come to England?
Yeah, I still live in England, so yeah. Wales, yeah.
Fantastic. The networking is taking place live and direct. I mean, when we talk about sport at the highest level, there's always this word called pressure, etc. Long days, long nights. Fleur, how do you get away from it all for a little bit? How do you relax? How do you get your downtime, if you have any downtime?
Yeah, well, I certainly haven't at the moment. And I think that's something that COVID has taught me. I think, I've been lucky enough to have two daughters, and who have grown up to be really strong characters, and, don't see much of me and see even less of me at the moment. But definitely in that time during COVID, when I was at home, it really hit home in terms of not having that time to myself. And I think as a mother, you don't anyway. So for me, it was, long walks with the dog. If the children would come along, great. But that was really valuable to me, and something that I'm definitely maintaining now as best I can with the travelling that I'm doing. But it took a long time, as I say, for me to realise that. And I think, perhaps should have done before, but it's certainly something I'm taking with me going forward.
Good. Sarah, how do you get away from all the pressure at Tottenham Hotspur Foundation?
Well, it's interesting. I like to do, I'm involved in other boards and things like that. So one of the things, and actually everything's all connected, so it's when I have that time to think a little bit strategically with my friends and think through how everything links together. But the other thing is I have started to do, since COVID, started to try and do a little bit more exercise. Actually, most of it linked to initiatives that emanated from work. So I try to do that, and I do also just like to be out in the sun. But unfortunately, we're not got too much of that at the moment. So
no. You need something on the green list.
And if I could go abroad, I'd be in Caribbean or in West Africa.
Listen, we're getting towards the end of what's been an absolutely rapid hour. These FBL talks just disappear. We have some YouTube comments, I'm told, about your inspirational chat and advice. I think they will be up any minute now, and I can read them out. Here we go. Miles Jacobson, really interesting and inspiring. Thank you to Fleur and Sarah for your time and knowledge, and to Rodney for asking the right questions to help us all learn. Thank you very much, Miles, for that. We got any more, or is that it? I think. Yeah, here we go. Andrew, inspiring panels. Sarah and Fleur dropping some gems from Andrew Bontiff there. Yes, some really, really good information there. Ladia J, great session. Hope to ask some questions to the panel. That was one of your questions there, Ladia, I think. The one about the commission report. I thought there were some good answers with that one. Keanu, great, amazing session going on right now. Listen, you guys you've done the business.
You've done the business.
I wonder if Swansea will play Tottenham one day. Wouldn't that be great?
Why not? What stops them?
Cup game. Inspirational panelists in Fleur and Sarah. Also great contribution from Oren, without doubt, and top hosting from Ronnie as always. Thank you.
Well, Rodney, what's Swansea got to do with anything?
Well, you never know. We might play each other one day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I used to go there a lot in my summer holidays, but
did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Cardiff was where my grandparents lived.
Is that so?
That's all.
Okay. I can definitely see you and Fleur getting together at some stage during the season, without doubt.
We will.
Good. Okay, well, listen, it's that time. I've got to wrap up now, apparently. It's been a really insightful discussion, and that's all we've really got time for. As I said, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Fleur Robinson and Sarah Ebanja. Really, really, really powerful information that I'm sure that those listening would have taken something away from. So thank you so much for your excellent advice and contributions. And a special thanks to Oren Bristol from the Premier League's Football Data Co, who joined us earlier. It's been a session I've learned lots from myself, and I'm sure those watching have also done the same thing as well. Myself and co-founder Leon Mann, I can tell you now, plans are afoot. The FBL talk series will continue, and we have another awesome session planned, so look out for that sometime soon. You can follow the Football Blacklist across social media on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And please do share the words of wisdom from Sarah and Fleur today to amplify the advice and messages from today. Thanks again, as always. You've been watching FBL Talks. Let's keep working together to better the game we all love and celebrate Black excellence. We've certainly had Black excellence in terms of Fleur and Sarah. Thank you so much for your time. No doubt I'll try and catch up with you both at some stage during the season. That is going to be upon us sometime soon.
Abseiling.
Indeed, yes. We have got to do
abseiling.
Yeah, from abseiling to First Stadium for everybody involved. The FBL Talks behind the scenes as well. Thank you, ladies, for your time. Go well. Be safe.
Thank you very much, Rodney.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.